Meditations by Marcus Aurelius, the journal of a Roman emperor. Marcus Aurelius ruled the Roman Empire at its height. He was the most powerful man in the world. He commanded armies, judged disputes that decided the fate of nations, and controlled wealth beyond imagination. Every night, after dealing with the weight of an empire, he sat down and wrote in a private journal. He never intended for anyone to read it. Almost 2,000 years later, those notes are now one of the most quoted books in human history, and the wisdom inside them still speaks directly to anyone trying to live a steady life in a chaotic world. If you have ever felt overwhelmed by your own responsibilities, you should know that the man who wrote Meditations had more weight on his shoulders than almost anyone in history. He used his journal to remind himself, again and again, of a small set of truths that kept him grounded. He was a Stoic philosopher long before he became an emperor, and Stoicism gave him a framework for facing pressure without breaking. The journal is essentially that framework written out in his own private voice. Here is the central idea that runs through every page. You cannot control what happens to you. You can only control how you respond. Marcus repeats this in different ways across the book. People will be rude. Plans will fall apart. Health will decline. Loved ones will die. None of it is within your power. What is within your power is your reaction, your interpretation, and your decision about what to do next. Mastering that response is, in the Stoic view, the entire purpose of a wise life. You should sit with how radical this idea is. Almost every modern self-help book promises you control over outcomes. Marcus promises the opposite. He tells you that outcomes are mostly out of your hands, and that trying to control them is the cause of much of your suffering. Letting go of that illusion is freedom. The world becomes simpler. You stop fighting battles you cannot win and start focusing your energy on the only thing you can actually influence, which is your own behavior. Stay with this, because Marcus also writes constantly about death. He reminds himself that life is short, that he could die today, and that this awareness should focus his attention on what actually matters. This sounds dark, but in his hands, it is the opposite. The reminder of death strips away the small worries that consume most people. Why are you angry about a delayed meeting? You are mortal. Why are you stressed about a stranger's opinion? You are mortal. The perspective is brutal and clarifying at the same time. Now think about how often you let small things ruin your day. A rude driver, a bad email, a delayed train. Marcus would tell you that none of these things have any real power over you unless you grant it to them. The Stoics had a phrase for this. They said that what disturbs you is not the event itself, but your judgment of it. Change the judgment, and the disturbance disappears. The events do not need to change at all. Here is another idea worth holding on to. Marcus writes that you should expect difficult people every morning. He suggests starting the day by mentally rehearsing the fact that you will meet rude, ungrateful, and arrogant people that day. This is not pessimism. It is preparation. If you expect difficulty, you will not be thrown off when it arrives. You will respond with calm instead of surprise. Anyone who works with the public, manages a team, or simply lives in a city will recognize the wisdom in this practice. You should also know that Marcus writes a lot about duty. He believed that every human being is born to play a role in the larger fabric of society. The role might be small or large, public or private. The size does not matter. What matters is that you show up for your responsibilities without complaint. He uses the example of a bee. A bee does not ask whether its work matters. It works because that is what bees do. Humans, in his view, should approach their duties with the same quiet acceptance. Stay with this, because Marcus also reminds himself of the power of present focus. He writes that the only moment you actually live in is the current one. The past is gone. The future does not yet exist. If you waste the present worrying about either, you lose the only thing you actually have. This sounds similar to modern mindfulness practice, and for good reason. The Stoics figured this out almost 2,000 years before the term became fashionable, and the principle has not changed. Now picture how this looks in your daily life. You are washing dishes. Your mind drifts to a worry from yesterday. Marcus would tell you to come back to the dishes. You are walking to a meeting. Your mind starts rehearsing an argument you might have. Marcus would tell you to come back to the walk. The training is endless and never fully complete. It is also the closest thing to peace that the Stoics ever promised, and many readers find it works exactly as advertised. Here is something else worth knowing. Marcus writes repeatedly about the importance of being honest with yourself. He criticizes his own flaws openly in the journal. He admits that he is prone to anger, distraction, and laziness. He does not pretend to be perfect. The journal is, in many ways, a tool for catching himself before those weaknesses take over. The act of writing the flaw down was, for him, the first step in fixing it. Modern psychology calls this self-awareness. Marcus simply called it living examined. You should pay attention to his views on fame. Marcus had access to as much fame as any human in history. He had statues built of him while he was still alive. His name was known across the empire, and yet he writes in Meditations that fame is meaningless. The people praising you today will be dead in a few generations. The people who will replace them will not remember you. The pursuit of glory is, in his view, one of the great wastes of a human life, and he reminds himself of this often because the temptation never fully leaves an emperor. Stay with this part for one more beat, because the chapter on gratitude in Meditations is small but powerful. Marcus thanks specific people in his life for what they taught him: his grandfather, his mother, his teachers. He lists their qualities and explains how each one shaped him. The act of writing those thanks down anchored him in something larger than his own ego. It is one of the most personal sections in the book, and it offers a small template that any modern reader can copy. Now consider why this book has lasted so long. The technology of life has changed beyond recognition. The wars Marcus fought, the diseases that killed his children, the political schemes that surrounded him, all of it is gone. What remains is a human being trying to live decently in a world that does not always cooperate. That problem is timeless. The advice is timeless. And the voice of the emperor, speaking to himself in private, somehow reaches across 2,000 years and lands directly in your hands. Here is the closing thought on this book. Meditations is not a manual for becoming a better leader or a more productive worker. It is a manual for becoming a calmer, steadier, more honest person. Everything else flows from that foundation. The emperor knew this when almost everyone around him was distracted by power and pleasure. 2 millennia later, the same wisdom is still waiting on every page. If you only take one thing from this summary, take this. You cannot control the world. You can only control your response to it. Practice that response every morning. Adjust it every evening. Do that for a few years, and you will start to understand why a Roman emperor's private journal became one of the most read books in human history.